I asked Lyle, I need to go to college. This music theory book is not enough. I gave him a great long letter of all the details why. And I could not believe how much I was disrespected when I got one word back from him called no. He said, no. You can't. Music became my escape from the chaos that Warren created because his rules were always shifting. You never knew when you thought you understood the system, but the next thing you looked, somebody was sent away for something new or the rules were changed about whatever in hindsight. And so there was a lot of fear that went along with that. I remember the overwhelming feeling from that time. I remember the 2012 to 15, especially 16, was anxiety myself. So I thought I was weird. I was disconnected from my emotions. I was dissociated in some ways. And I felt alien in some ways. I will tell you that was extremely offensive to me. Like, I would be walking down the college aisle behind whatever girl and you'd see with the pants. And I'm just like, why can't people, this is an institution of learning. I don't even want to look at this person and they're making me look, this is just, I'm not ever going to dress like that. And
if your singing is good
oh,
enough.
it's not. My singing is not. Okay, I'm good to go.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is the Jaden Jeffs Podcast. Today we have the new hottest couple in town, and that's right. And I'm excited to have you guys here. We have Katie Fischer, who is from the FLDS, and Kent Bull from the Kingston Group. Kent and I did a podcast yesterday, this will go out a week later than that one. So if you haven't watched that, I really enjoyed our conversation, Kent. But with that, do you guys have anything you want to say to start out the podcast?
Yeah, we've been married for, what is it, almost 3 years?
Almost 3 years.
So we're not exactly the newest hot couple. Well,
well, you're new here. You're new here. So
we got married after we fell in love at a piano, and we ended up sitting down and playing music together, playing a duet on the spot together, and fell in love right then and there.
Mm-hmm. Was that in college?
No, I had like 6 months left to go before I would finish my senior recital. I went to college for piano performance, and I was just about to the end of that journey, and Kent happened to be in town for the 4th of July, and the piano that we met at was just in my house. He came over with some friends for just to hang out, to play music and chat.
Yeah. What year did you guys meet?
2021.
2021. Mm-hmm. So it's been four or 5 years?
Yeah, in just
4
a
years.
couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Katie, you came from the FLDS, and a lot of people want to know more about your story. For me, this is kind of a unique situation because I didn't know very many crickers. I knew pretty much everybody that was in Texas and South Dakota and all those places, but I didn't know a whole lot of crickers. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you grew up?
Yeah. Well, I grew up, I'm just going to do a little introduction here and we can go into it more later. I grew up in a house with 3 moms, 4, one of them passed away, and I had the first part of my life especially, we had a lot of fun playing in fields and climbing the mountains around the town and doing a lot of things outside because, we had a lot of children. The ratio of parents to children was small, so the children, there was too many kids to the parents, so we kind of just played a lot outside and we're glad when we didn't get on the parents' nerves too much. We'd play a lot out in the orchards, pick apples, and help harvest in the big fields. And that's some of the favorite things I have about growing up. I also really enjoyed the celebrations when I was young. there was the Harvest Festival and things where people would get up and sing and play music. And before I was like 9 years old, there was a lot of that. And
What year were you born?
1993.
93.
Yeah.
So your growing up life was kind of in the Warren Jeffs era, but
Yes. The earliest part of it, though, I remember a lot of that stuff that I really enjoyed. I remember when I was 9 years old, that was the last time we sang at the Harvest Festival. I sang there with my third grade class, and after that, he canceled the Harvest Festival. I'm very disappointed about that.
yeah, you're kind of a music genius in the crick. Everybody I know that knows you says you're really good at music. Did you want to play something right now or later on?
Yeah, I have a little musical experiment here I want you guys to help me with.
Okay.
And I am trained as a pianist, not as a singer, but I'm going to be singing here, so you'll have to put up with a bit of that sort of noise. And just so you know, I memorized every song in the hymn book, and I still know most of them. And there was a while where that got to be the only thing that existed was the hymns. Anyway, that's a long story, but let's get this going.
When did you first start playing the piano? Just when you were really young, or?
Yeah, we always had a piano in our house. We'd get up and play and sit on the mother's laps or the big girls that would play. But I did start, I took a few lessons when I was 4 years old, but then I started really seriously going with my teacher, Misty, when I was 7.
Okay. I even have a lot of Misty's songs, so she's a pretty good, is she better pianist than you, or are you better than her now?
I think I may have gone further with some technical things and definitely with some formal study. I've definitely studied with some of the best teachers in the world, some world-class pianists. I don't think she has. She's done probably about as much recording or more than me as far as like commercial production of music. She's probably done more teaching than I have, although I think I might have taught.
Is she still in the group? Or
yeah,
not?
I believe she's still in the group,
Okay.
as far as I know.
Well, I would not want to hold up everybody hearing you sing, so.
All right, okay, let's go for it.
Okay, careful when you hear this, because the first time I heard her sing, I fell in love with her.
Oh, dear.
Well, so whoever's watching,
if
you have a similar experience, I would understand.
We're going to get lots of views out of this, so thank you, Katie.
And enjoy Jaden and Kent's discomfort when I make them participate. Here we go.
Discomfort.
You get to clap along.
Woo. Okay,
I'll
give
show
us a signal.
Like this. Or... When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Woo! Woo! Thank you for your support.
Yes. So.
We just have to laugh at some of the things that we used to think were so serious.
Yeah, we do. That is one thing about the FLDS is, I guess you probably had a lot more music than even I ever knew. Because for one, well, you were in the crick, but I guess for me, like, if it wasn't on the B Zion Increasingly disc or something like that, or some some special song that Debbie and Mother Becky wrote or something, then
it was not available to you.
Yeah.
Well, see, in the crick we had a lot of sharing. We would share stuff. We would share a lot of things on thumb drives and hard drives that weren't acceptable. And there was a few years, I would say like 2011 or 12 to 2015, where we didn't have anything. I actually remember going to the trash bin and throwing all of my classical music books into the trash bin and deleting everything from my hard drive. Like, I really tried to to give the program a honest try at that point. And I still remember the feeling of grief as I threw those friends into the garbage. And then eventually there was just such an empty feeling where I knew that music should be. There was a pit in my stomach. I just longed for good music to play, for music that stimulated my creativity and my emotions. And you know, you get thinking about that enough, and you start to realize that it just doesn't make sense. Then when the next time somebody comes along with something to share and it's not too bad, it's just Celtic Thunder, then you sneak it onto the laptop or the computer in a file where mother won't find it. And, we listen to it, but, we don't listen to it too often, but just enough that we can write down the lyrics and the chords, and then we go play it on the piano, and everybody's like, that's so beautiful. I'm like, yeah. Isn't this wonderful? And talking about that, do you want to hear about what happened with Lyle?
Yeah.
This is such a good story.
So let me ask, you were buying in, you were throwing your stuff away, because I was a bit confused about if you were sort of one of those rebellious kind of stoner type girls, or because
no, I wasn't.
Or you were like full United Order.
I was
trying.
Fully in.
Okay, yeah, that's what I didn't know, because when I heard your story, it just I really did just initially hear it from like my sisters. And from Ella, right? So
sounds like that they had a certain perspective.
Yeah.
How funny.
What did Ella think?
Well, we'd have to ask Barb for sure, but I know
Ella was one of my music friends.
Okay. I was gonna say, if she ever leaves, she's probably the type that would come on the podcast.
Oh, totally. She's very extroverted.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I just heard that you went to college, and so I just automatically assumed, oh, she must be one of those stoner girls that sort of does whatever she wants and was always going to leave anyway. But
so my exterior actually was to be very in line with things, but I definitely have a side to my personality that is not nonconformist. But I tried to conform so that enough on the outside so that I didn't get in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt your story about Lyle. We all love dear Uncle Lyle, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that story is part of my leaving story, because, music that's the whole story, honestly, right there, music. But music became my escape from the chaos that Warren created, because his rules were always shifting. You never knew when you thought you understood the system, but the next thing you looked, somebody was sent away for something new, or the rules were changed about whatever in hindsight. And so there was a lot of fear that went along with that. I remember the overwhelming feeling from that time. I remember the 2012 to 15, especially 16, was anxiety. Anyway, so when the United Order first started going on, 2011, 12, I was all in. So I was trusting in God that things would work out and that we would be blessed with priesthood music. God will inspire us to write and compose. We'll be inspired with music from heaven. It will be better than anything this world has ever seen. And so I gave that a good try. I started to try to wrap my mind around that. I actually sat down with my friends and we did different songwriting projects together. And some of those were actually really amazing learning experiences. Like, I wouldn't have been pushed to develop my creativity in this area to the degree I have if I wouldn't have been left with nothing. I probably would have been a lot more just of a consumer, because there's so much good music out there. But what I found out from this process of trying to write my own music is that music can't be created in a vacuum. That is, everything that we have have as a part of our music, even a simple hymn, has been handed down to us from other people. It could be the people in the Middle Ages who started putting chants into their hymn services, into their church services, or it could be, Martin Luther King, who wrote some lyrics that are, I can't remember, "The Mighty Fortress is Our God" or something in the hymn book. It could have been the early composers like Bach, who started putting certain structures, like certain chords in certain order. What we have as a musical language has been handed down to us. And for Lyle or Warren or anybody else to think that, oh, we're just going to create music without acknowledging that. I mean, they tell us to get rid of the Gentile music, but what about the Gentile chords? What about the Gentile lyrics? What about the Gentile melodies? Like, for us to think that we can come up with a new musical language that doesn't somehow owe tribute or owe gratitude to that acknowledgement of that, it's just...
Yeah, can I clarify something so the viewers kind of understand? What was kind of your view on making music at the time? Because when I was growing up, I remember some of even Dad's own wives would kind of make some songs, and he would say, "Okay, but you have to just keep them. You can't spread them around or anything like that, because only the people I appoint can write and create songs, because then they'll be heavenly inspired." Like when I was,
Wow.
when I was growing up, this was a big deal. And I don't think the viewers understand how big of a deal this was. Like, if one of Dad's wives wrote a song, he might even say, you like delete that. That's like inspired of the devil or something like that. And I'm not giving a specific instance of that, but I know a lot of people that had musical instruments that Dad said, get rid of. The Lord doesn't want you writing songs. They won't be priesthood inspired songs, essentially. So I guess what I'm asking you is, did you feel like pretty much anybody could write a song? Did you feel like it had to be inspired? Kind of what was your view on writing music at the time?
I didn't know that he was doing that, but I did know that I heard a little bit about that you should be a person who's inspired to do this or who's approved by the bishop or whatnot. There wasn't a huge amount of that going on where he would actually listen to people and go through a systematic process of approving or denying the opportunity. So it wasn't a huge concern, but when I do remember when I started hearing some of that, I made sure that, like, I thought, yes, I'm going to make sure that I'm one of the people who are appointed to do this because I can't not be.
Yeah. So, I guess at the time you felt like you could write songs and you just felt like they should be some kind of priesthood songs. Did you feel like the music was supposed to be, priesthood in some sense?
Yes, I definitely thought it needed to go along with the dogma, with the proper line. I actually got into writing music because Misty had been encouraged by the bishop to get rid of all her stuff as she was left with nothing to teach people. So she started writing, and she was encouraged to do that. She wrote her own piano student material, her own curriculum, and we had to learn the songs she wrote. And she would write, at the end of every section of the piano book, she would have a writing exercise or a writing song. And that's where I got into it.
Yeah. It's just such a fascinating subject to me because I think people outside don't realize how big of a deal this was. But I feel like we were being choked from every possible creative endeavor in any way, and music was just one of them. Because I remember by 2013 and 14, a lot of my sisters that had like odd instruments or just different instruments. I mean, some of them had the violins, right? But then there was some other ones. I don't even know the names, but pretty much Dad would say, like, get rid of all those until they were even getting rid of some of their violins and everything. And as time went on, we were just getting more and more choked from like
Yeah, and the
any
last
music.
thing I've heard was that the only instrument that we found in the New Jerusalem is the piano. And like my sister, who just recently left, she was saying that something. I think that's what she said. They got rid of everything but the pianos, and you can only take piano lessons if you take them in your home. She actually asked Marilyn Jeffs if she could take piano lessons, and that's what Marilyn says, only if you do it in your home. But she couldn't find a teacher to come to her house, so she had to go without. And that left me laughing, because just think about the piano being the only instrument in the New Jerusalem. I mean, why would God choose to keep an instrument that has hammers? I mean, what about our voices? Like, music springs from the voice. Melody springs from the voice. I mean, that's before humans could speak language. The first thing they were doing was humming. And I mean, who's to tell me that that's not going to be available to us anymore? And then rhythm springs from the body. You start moving, it falls into a pattern. You start doing any sort of found instrument, banging your spoon on the table. You got rhythm. And who's to tell me that we have to restrain ourselves? And I mean, that's what he was doing. And that's actually a really interesting thing behind the FLDS music is the restraint. And you hear rhythms that are very strict, straight, even, unsyncopated. And that is a reflection of the control that he was trying to impose on things. You hear things that sound like
the YFZ
servant of God, just very even rhythms. It's
beat.
It's music that is supposed to keep you in the line.
The YFZ Ranch music sounded very much like that when you showed it to me.
Yeah.
No beat, right? There was never allowed to be a
No
beat.
syncopations, no drum rhythm, no drums. Anything, like the more that you could even out the music, not do beats, not do anything that pokes out or that surprises in the music or that makes people feel uncomfortable in the least.
Yeah, but like for me, that's why getting used to a beat was so hard.
Oh, yeah.
Even still, a lot of people think country music is the more mellow music, and when I play it, it has like a heavy
drums.
Yeah.
Well, that's because drums make you get into your body. And actually, the thing that Warren Jeffs and any other sort of narcissistic leader wants to have their families or followers avoid is getting into their bodies. Because once you get into your body tells you the truth. You feel emotions. You feel, I feel tension here. Maybe this thing they're telling me to do is not good because my heart doesn't like it. I feel tension. Or you feel this rhythm in this song and it's like, I want to dance. Oh, there's a girl. Time to go and mate. Or any sort of emotion. Rhythm gets you into your body, so cutting it out of the music will help people restrain their thoughts.
I feel like this is what, Warren Jeffs would consider any kind of happy body type of movement. He would consider that of the devil, essentially.
Yes.
And so that's one of the, he would say something like, the beat of the music comes from like the black people, and in reference to that, essentially comes from the seed of Cain or the devil.
I will have to say that the black people have the rhythm really figured out. You can tell they really get into their bodies with that stuff. I really actually enjoy it.
Yeah,
enjoy seeing how much they get to that.
But it is like. Music was taken away in the beginning, but it got worse and worse. And I feel like anything that could give somebody enjoyment had to be removed.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to tell the story about Lyle, but I just want to ask. So in 2011 through 2012, 13, 14, were you kind of one of the people a part of the United Order that you would consider, because there's quite a big group of people there that were kind of on the fringes through that time. They couldn't ever become a member. Were you one of those people that, maybe the bishop would visit more often? I guess your family.
Lyle came to our house once, and it was because my dad was having a hard time with his last wife. He was having a hard time getting her to behave or getting her to be submissive and agreeable and whatnot. And so Lyle came to our house and showed us how to conduct a class and prayer circle. But that's all. Other than that, we had a few meetings at the meeting house with him. Were
you a member through all that time?
Yeah.
How many times did you ever get become a non-member,
No.
then a member? Okay.
Not until, I don't know what it was, 2000 and late 15 or 16, when most of the Crickers were non-member for a little while.
Okay. Yeah.
Except for a special little group.
Yeah. Did you feel like the good work was advancing through those years, or?
I felt like the good work was advancing for maybe a year. And then I started seeing the frailties of human nature and the follies of the people who couldn't stand the food system and then decided to go out and buy treats from the store, or they happened to need something the storehouse didn't have. And, I remember putting a special request. You had to put a special request in for anything that wasn't on the shelves. And the special request stack got so high that you started not getting anything because they just weren't whittling through it fast enough. And so I started asking myself, well, we would have enough money for all this stuff if people weren't asking for what they didn't need, or if people weren't taking what they didn't need. Like somewhere there's a leak in the boat, there's water getting in and it's making the whole thing sink. And the more I started seeing people just not even care, they just weren't buying it anymore, I grew discouraged a little bit. But what really got me buying my own stuff at the store was I started having health problems. And I ended up needing some special food, and the storehouse didn't have it, so I started buying my own stuff. And once I started doing that, I started feeling some compassion for other people who were doing it, because before that, I was just angry at them. So I started feeling compassion, and, well, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. Okay, the thing that is bad is the system, because the system's not working. This isn't a system that's even designed right.
Yeah, well, I don't know how deep we want to go down this rabbit hole, but I heard at the time that there was certain people in the creek that were starving, weren't getting the food they needed, weren't getting whatever it is. Do you know if there was people that actually starved? Did you ever have a time where you were without food? Because I know they would deliver food to all the houses, right?
We never went without food, but we did go without meat. Like, we would sometimes just have meals where we had rice and beans, for example. And then there was times when, like, the oil would be rancid. There was a lot of sunflower seed oil and safflower oil, which I come to find out is really bad for inflammation. But sometimes it'd be rancid, and then people would have health problems after that. Things like that. But no, we never starved.
Well, I want to ask you about the caretaker stuff a little bit, because did you ever have a caretaker, or a caretaker that there was a lot of these caretakers in the creek that sort of took girls your age and were pretty inappropriate?
No, my caretakers were always my brothers or uncles.
Okay.
So I didn't have that happen, fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, the caretaker thing is very, very, very weird in the creek.
Yeah.
It got pretty weird, especially after the bishop left and whatnot.
I did have a caretaker that bought a big, big dually Ford brand new truck on my mother's credit, and then she ended up having to pay it off. I think he may have given her some money after, but he took a while because he got sent away and she got left with a bag for a while. So there was other sorts of abuse, even if it wasn't inappropriate sexual stuff.
Yeah. So by this point in 2011, you were what, 23, 24?
1993 to
okay, so you were 20.
20 and
yeah, you were 18, 19, 20.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, well, you were 20 in 2013.
Yeah.
Right. Did you ever want to get married? How much did
I
you
wanted
think
to
about
get
getting
married when I was like 15 to 18, pretty bad. And I would go and look at Warren's picture on the wall and just worship it and be like, just feel this great yearning in my heart. And maybe I could just marry him, you know? And so I can totally understand the young girls that married him and how that would have been okay in their minds. But anyway, once I got to be 18 years old, I started seeing that I had some interesting things to learn, like music. And I didn't really care to get married right away anymore. So having something to do and seeing that you can develop and mature and be curious about the world, that was good for me.
But you totally understand 100% how a bunch of girls married Warren Jeffs at 16, 17 years old. I mean, they looked at him as,
Yeah.
I mean, who better to marry?
That was set out as the goal for women. If you could have married somebody that's high status at a young age, you got it made.
Yeah.
Well, almost. You have to keep trying after that, but that's the most important thing.
I feel like any mother that was in our family, especially later on, felt so much like they wanted to be married before, but then they go into this long time of, I don't know, being told what to do and sort of being on the lowest end of everything, kind of, in a weird way. Like, you're the prophet's family, but you're not one of because only so many can be one of his close family, I guess.
Yeah.
And so,
the appearance from the outside was a lot different than the actual thing.
Yeah.
Experience.
How did you view the prophet's family?
Well, they were nothing short of perfection. And when they came out with the Design Increasingly music, that was the highlight, the ultimate proof that they were perfect. Because, wow, that music sounded so angelic. And you just listen to these ladies sing. They sound so holy. And my goodness, you know, Warren, he just gets sounding better and better. His first music, it was a little more rough, but now he's sounding better and better. Now I can't stand to hear him. Like, I mean, he chews through those diphthongs and, but yeah.
Yeah. I just have to ask about how you saw the prophet's family, because I think a lot of people saw Lyle's family and really thought we were similar. How did you see Lyle's family?
Yeah. Well, they looked perfect when they came to church. That's all we knew about them, other than there was a few people that I had a little bit of interaction with. One of them was Charlene. And come to find out, she has so many flaws that Lyle got rid of her eventually. So, you know, she just she sewed at the same place as one of my sisters. She ended up getting sent away. What just wasn't there one day anymore. Or left, I'm not sure, but same diff.
Yeah. So how did you see Lyle through these days? Just as a bishop, did you?
Yeah, I would sit on the front or second row. Second row, that's where our family sat at church. And
did the men and women still sit with each other, or it was separated?
It wasn't separated at first.
It was separated in 2011 or something, wasn't it?
It seems like it's a little bit later, but maybe I'm thinking of earlier. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. I forgot about that, actually. But what I'm remembering is Lyle was there for a couple years before the United Order thing started up, because they were starting to do meetings for a little while. But
didn't he become the bishop in 2008? Yeah.
So what I'm thinking of right now, I'd sit on the second row during those years, those earlier years, and I'd just look up at him and with just adoring and be like, you know, here's our salvation. He's going to lead us to the right place. And sometimes I would see a light around his face, and I'd feel this great joy in my heart.
What do you think that was? Was it preconditioning?
Yeah. I mean, I also was in the place of a child where I hadn't developed a healthy understanding of how to just understand the world, be in the world without needing to be led and guided, and he was a savior figure. He came, and we had some years there where we had no bishop. We were just left on our own, no prophet, no meetings, and he ended up coming back, waltzing in one day. We have meetings now. There he is, and he can talk to the prophet. We have a lifeline now. We're not going to go down the drain. And actually, that's an important thing, is like, it's important to understand the impact of leaving people with no hope for a while. You leave people with no hope. There's no communication directly with a bishop or with a prophet. You could write a letter, but it's really not likely you'll hear back anything. And then all of a sudden, well, we're having meetings again, and you can talk to the bishop. Like, that makes people who were just waiting for a straw be like,
our prayers were answered.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this sort of cycle that happened again and again, where you would be left without hope and then you would get hope again. This sort of cycle cements the devotion of people until they just jump ship. I mean, if they don't, somebody could potentially go their whole life just with that sort of reinforcement. You've got some words for this.
Intermittent reinforcement.
Yeah, well, what are you thinking about what I was just saying?
I guess the way I kind of see this is, you can, if somebody will go through that, if you can make them sacrifice something for you repeatedly, well, if you bring it kind of to a conclusion and they have somewhat of a decent life, they're going to always remember that, and they're going to be much more loyal because of it.
Yeah.
But if you keep going worse and worse, which happened to pretty much everybody there, then people are going to start jumping ship. I know, like, Warren Jeffs did this especially bad. I think a lot of people don't know this, but he did this like especially bad with his children, where he would, do really a lot for them, then take a lot away from them, just, like every month basically. And so I think I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but I totally know what you're saying. And I think that for most of the FLDS, they're getting to the point where it's just happened too much.
Yeah, I think it was on purpose, because that's actually a tactic that narcissists end up using to get people to behave a certain way. And it clearly worked for him. He was doing on purpose, whether he admitted it like that or not.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the confluence of abuse tactics and addiction. That's very reminiscent of the addictive cycle. Indulge, pull back. As well as to try to break people's spirit, or to make sure that they're subservient, to say, look, I can give you all these things. I've taken them away. You've got to submit, to dominate, which is the abusive cycle. So I think that it seems to me like that if it was just about abuse and dominance, it probably wouldn't have been so frequent or regular. I imagine it's more than just abuse and dominance, and that's why, to me, it sounds like it was probably more addiction, and so sort of internal processes in Warren's mind that got out of whack. Because if it was just about control, he would have realized at some point, oh, I've got control, I don't need to do this anymore, until somebody starts acting out of line.
That's exactly what I was thinking. If it was just about control, he would have, if he really did want to just control people and get more money and whatnot, it seems like he would have stopped at some point and said, okay, well, if they're going to stay, I got to treat them right now.
But see, this is the difference between the FLDS and the Kingston Group. The Kingston Group does just enough of the abuse cycle to show we're dominant, be our slave, stay here. And I don't know what happened in your father's case to where he kept the doing things over and over and over again, because that wore people out. And it was evidence eventually to some people of, okay, maybe this isn't an inspired man of God. And so in some way, there was a kind of blessing, a dark blessing.
Yeah, that it happened so fast.
Right, and so regularly.
Yeah, and it kind of opened a lot of people's eyes, like mine.
Right.
Well, Katie, I want to ask you, did you know anything, get taught anything about sex before you left?
No.
Ever?
No.
Did you?
The only thing I ever got a little bit of help was with making sure I had panty liners. But I went to college. I was 23. I started seeing guys giving me weird vibes, and I couldn't stand it. I would really just brush them off with like really awful looks and don't touch me, don't look at me. And I finally got up the courage to look up Wikipedia and just figure out how everything worked, and I just couldn't believe it. And once I looked at it, once I figured it out, I'm like really angry. Like, why didn't anybody just tell me about this stuff? Like, there's a lot of anxiety that comes around not knowing. Is that man right there that's looking at me going to come over here and say or do something that's going to put me in trouble? Like, if you don't know what the process looks like, then you fear a lot that you're going to be taken advantage of. So I finally lost that fear to some degree after I figured that out.
Yeah. A lot of my sisters look at the FLDS and they feel like the women are super, super controlled, whereas the men are, but they have a little bit more freedom. I just want to get your perspective on this from someone that was in the crick versus like on one of the lands of refuge. Do you feel like the women were super, super controlled? I mean, obviously they were to a large extent.
Yeah, well, it changed over the years. They definitely were by the time the United Order years in 2011, 12 to 15, 16 came along. Before that, there was some more freedom. I knew some women before that who drank wine or who watched some movies. And, that was bad. We knew that was bad, but they're still acceptable. They're still okay, But once the United Order got there, then we didn't go out of town without a priested man in the vehicle. And actually, I have an interesting story. One of the ways I finally started getting out, when I decided that this is just nonsense, I decided I needed to go take piano lessons. And I tried it once, and my sister had told the bishop on me, and he had told me not to. And I had to cancel that teacher. So after 6 months or so, I don't know, of grieving, then I finally said, you know what? I'm going to teach piano lessons in Canaryville. So I have an excuse to stop at St. George on the way up there. And my parents were so worried the first time I went. My mother, dad was dead by then. My mother was so worried that I wouldn't have a priest man or a mother with me. So I promised, you know what, I will take one of my friends with me. And she sat in the trunk the whole day while I taught piano lessons in the houses. She sat in the car and stretched out and in the trunk, whatever. Anyway, I stopped at St. George and started taking piano lessons and then would go up and teach. But anyway, after that first time when my friend came with me, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think I made up a lie. I said, yeah, I'm going to have somebody with me or something. And then I just wouldn't prove it, But yeah, were the women controlled? As far as where we'd go, as far as what we could read, yeah, I mean, there was, if you had a caretaker, if you still had a conscience, you would tell people what you were reading. You would make sure and read the right things. We didn't go to the libraries, whatever. Eventually, I got over that when I found out that music theory would get me the compositional tools I needed. So in the name of learning how to compose, because I had a mission to compose at this point, I was supposed to write. In my mind, I needed to help write the music books, the piano books, because I had a lot of students to teach. So I thought, I need to learn how to do music theory. So I started going to the Dixie State University library, college library, to look at their music books.
In St. George?
Mm-hmm. And I got Mother to excuse me for doing that. She would go with me, actually. And I got her to, I had the excuse of, oh, well, I'm doing this for my mission, So, yeah, but everything was definitely controlled.
Yeah, everything was controlled, and I certainly wasn't arguing that wasn't. I was just trying to get your perspective on sort of how bad it was. But we're excited to hear this story about Lyle. So.
All right. So yeah, I got a nice big roster of students that, because piano lessons were free, I mean, you traded your services, everything was shared equally, including my time. My time was donated as a piano teacher and also to help fix up piano books and write music and whatever. So I was just grateful I had something that wasn't terribly tedious and that I could maybe enjoy some. But I did not have the tools I needed. I didn't have the education I needed to take on that sort of a task. But I learned while I was trying to figure it out. I would teach piano lessons for 3 months and then realize that I didn't know what system I was supposed to be doing or how one thing worked or the other. And then I would fire on my students and say, I don't know what I need to learn. I got to go figure it out. Maybe I'll teach you later. And then I'd go work on whatever it was I didn't know. I would go find it, whatever information I could. I went around to all the teachers in the town and got them to give me whatever information I could get from them. And, then by that point, the next list of special requests for piano students would have stacked up. And I'd be like, okay, I can try out what I've learned on these people. Come on. And I really feel sorry for him. But anyway, I asked Lyle, I need to go to college. This music theory book is not enough. I gave him a great long letter of all the details why. And I could not believe how much I was disrespected when I got one word back from him called no. He said, no, you can't go. After all of that effort and all of those brilliant ideas on those 5 pages of why it was a good idea, just no. And I was disappointed, but after that, I just started to say, this is nonsense. So by that point, when I realized what game he was playing, called Nonsense Game, then I said, okay, well, I'm going to get what I need. And I arranged a meeting with him after lots of waiting, then finally got in with him. I went into his office and had a 2-hour meeting.
What year was this?
I can't remember, probably 2015. So I sat down for a 2-hour meeting with Lyle, and he went over all the basic things like, yeah, how's everything going? And are you doing your job? I said, okay, piano, that's great. Teaching and composing. And yeah, for sure, you do all your deep cleaning. You fit everything in, right? You can't get out of that work. And, we've got to get rid of Gentile music. We have got, what do we do about this and that and the other? We have got to get rid of, that was his mantra through the whole entire 2 hours. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I've gotten rid of everything. I don't have anything, And, well, I don't have anything bad. I've cleaned my stuff up. But anyway, I couldn't get him to budge to my side at all. I was trying to not be obvious that I had a side. But he just wasn't giving me anything to work with. And we even talked about hymns. And I was talking to him about, a lot of the hymns in the hymn book were made by non-Mormons. Like, Mozart has some in there and things. Mozart was immoral. Don't you dare have Mozart. He slept with women who weren't his wife. And when people do that, then it bleeds into their music and you're going to get the germ if you listen to it. So, he said, well, we're going to have to redo the hymn book. We can't have those in there. Eventually, I'm sorry, that's just what we have right now, but that's pretty soon on the list. And so at this point, I'm like, okay, can I please play something for you on the piano? I want to show you what I've been doing, And so I go out there and I play some nice chords for him. Listen to these nice chords, how they sound real good. This is how you compose music. You put chords on the piano first. Then you break the chords up. You play one note after another in these nice sounding patterns. And I did that. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. That sounds really good. I don't see anything wrong with that. And the trick behind it was I was playing chord progressions from Bach and Chopin. And then I broke those up in the exact way Bach had. And he didn't know the songs at all. So he's just like, yeah, I like it. And tell you what, you just go and be inspired. I don't see anything wrong with that music. That's fine. That's just, I'm like, I'll get out the door right now. Well, we're good. We're good. So I got out the door, and I tried not to just lie to him. I didn't tell any outright lies that I can remember, but I was like, I'm not going out this door without having some music to play, because I was so hungry for music. So after that, I got out the door, and I'm just like, yeah, I got permission from Lyle to do this. Good luck. You go try. You have to get your own. Nobody else did, but they just started playing it anyway. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't the first one. There was a few other people that I knew that never got rid of all their stuff. And honestly, a lot of people that I knew, they just weren't too concerned about the details. They didn't care about, no, what's the problem with the little John Schmidt here? There's a lot of people who just didn't ever get rid of. They would try to be careful about it because they didn't want to cause tension with other people who were hardliners like me. I was a hardliner. I'm like, okay, if we're doing this, we're doing this. And when this is dumb, this is dumb. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the point. That was a key, clear point for me when I'm like.
Did you
Nope.
you have drums at that point, or
No.
did you ever have a beat in your music, or?
No. So the first time that people started putting syncopation or beats in their music, the first time that me and my friends did, my friends were music people. Like, that's the people I only really ever connected with, other than, I had acquaintances when we did field work and canning and all that sort of stuff. But my best friends were music people. So we would get together and check out each other's stuff. Well, eventually I decided to do voice training, because I couldn't sing. I really couldn't sing. I always talked in my head voice. I couldn't even access my chest voice. And
Could any FLDS person
access
yeah.
no. And I think a lot
your
of women,
chest voice?
I
Is
think
that
a
what
lot
it
of
is?
women did learn how to access their chest voice, but there was definitely a limit on, okay, there was nobody that could just sing besides Kathy J. The Grandma Kath is the music grandma there in the creek. Kath Jessup, whatever. Trying to remember her name. She was the music grandma, and she had some children and some grandchildren that could really sing, and they were my heroes and my idols. I wanted to marry one of the boys, and I even tried to put stuff together where we could play together, and I got the project lined up, and Lyle shut it down. Lyle said no when I asked him. And anyway, she could sing. Not very many other people could sing. And the reason why, my theory, is that learning how to sing requires you or the safety to be ridiculous in your own home, and hopefully other places too. But your family has to not shut down terrible noise and terrible body movements. When we're talking about Warren shutting down creativity and anything that's ridiculous, any beats, anything that makes your body movements look threatening or sexual or ridiculous, or anything that's outside safety for the leader, or for the, what happens when you sing is you have to be willing to do vocal fry, go around, and to be able to do all sorts of weird noises to build your vocal cords. And people that the feeling that I had in my home when I would make those sorts of noises when I was young is, you're not supposed to do that. That's just the feeling that comes up. I'm not saying that that's exactly what people said, but it just wasn't appreciated. And any noise in the house that was upsetting, and it's understandable, there's so many kids in most homes that it was just tough to keep everything peaceable. That plus the...
I feel like there's definitely that aspect, but I almost feel like it was wrong.
Wrong to what?
To sing from, like, for a woman to sing from her chest voice.
Oh yeah, the sort of edgy Gentile sound. Totally.
Like,
totally
if you
wrong.
play an FLDS song,
They don't go there.
every song sounds like the same. Like, yeah, some women have a better.
Non-vibrato.
No
vibrato. None.
Yeah.
Only people that could do that was Warren himself, and that's because it was just a natural part of his voice.
Will you push your mic down
Supposedly.
barely? Just, I want the camera to kind of see over. You might have to kind of force it down. I mean, it can still be pretty high. Just, yeah, there. Now people can see a little bit better. I wish, do you have a FLDS song right there on your computer that we can show people the voice? I just wish people understood, like, when I came out and started listening to music, that was one of the most crazy things I learned, is the women sounded so much different. To the point where I was like, I can't even tell the difference between one FLDS woman from another now. You know, I mean, kind of. They have a slight...
I'm sorry, I don't have any music. I decided for them, I decided to not pollute this laptop with FLDS women music.
That's fine. I
will
think
sing one for you, though. I'll try to use the correct voice.
Yeah. It's so crazy to me that they could not go out of that voice. Those, the Bizine Increasingly dish you were talking about, to me, those are horrible songs.
Well, that's because when you go into your chest voice, it sounds sexual, or it sounds big and resonant. It's starting to sound smoky. Watch out. And that makes some men get really uncomfortable. So I'm going to sing a song, just a little part of a song that it's really been on my mind recently because it makes me angry. And happens to be one of the songs that my best friend wrote. One of my best friends wrote a song called Who Needs to Look for Friends? This was 2011 or 12.
In the FLDS.
Yes. She wrote this for our little choir we had a practice group in our choir, 2011 or 12. And we were all real faithful at that time and trying to do what we were told. What we were told was, your friends should be found in your family. You should not socialize outside of your family. You can do business, but that is not socialization. You should not gossip. You should not make friends outside of your family. And so she wrote this song called Who Needs to Look for Friends? And it makes me fairly angry to think of the lyrics. I'll try to remember them. I'll just scat sing if I forget. There is something everybody needs. Everybody's got to have a friend. In our home, they're plentifully found because we've got them all around. La 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 something. With so many people within our walls, who needs to look for friends?
Yeah, good job. I can see that song kind of being a hit.
Oh, it was a blast. This is one of the first people that I knew in that time that started bringing syncopation. Like, she was revolutionary. She brought in rhythms that and then I got to tell you about one that I wrote about the same time because we were sitting there feeding off each other's ideas. So I started doing voice training and started hearing, thinking about syncopation a little bit. And how come, do we really have to do music that's boring? And so I wrote a song about singing. And it's like, the main beats about here. And I felt incredibly daring for being willing to risk myself putting a rhythm out like that. It's like, many a time I've heard a fine singer, and I couldn't listen enough. It could sound so good that I try it myself, but I find I don't know my stuff. La, da, 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 da. Anyway, that was like, there was such a feeling of, I did it. I put out the sound. What's going to happen now? Am I going to get in trouble? And I didn't. It didn't become a hit because people knew what was safe. It became a hit with people who were slightly rebellious or trying to, or okay with a little bit of crazy stuff, but the other people didn't take it. Now, the one that became a hit, I did with my friend April, a song. She wrote it mostly, and then I edited it and did the music part. I did a song called Sisterly Nostalgia. It was about being separated from your sisters, having families split up. Oh, sister dear, the days when you were here start to seem so far away, etc. And that didn't have anything wild in it. It was pretty deep and had a lot of beautiful symbolic language in it. And that was a hit. So there was a lot of really good memories like that, I wouldn't have been pushed to exercise my creativity the way I was. And I got a lot of confidence from the projects that we actually completed. Those are fun memories. And at the same time, I still get a pit in my stomach for when I think of how I would feel like I didn't have the resources I needed so often. Like I'd want to do things I didn't have a teacher for, I didn't have books for, I didn't have any information, the websites or anything anyway. So I kind of don't like to think about it because there's a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay. We don't mean to leave you out of the conversation. Do you have anything to say or?
This is really fascinating.
Okay.
Some of these details we've talked about before, but hearing them this way is kind of fun.
Okay. Yeah. I keep asking questions because I was always on the really strict end, and I'm trying to get a feel for, kind of how life was. And did you ever get you wrote the song about being separated. Did you get separated?
Some of my siblings got separated, but I always was with my mother. I worried about it, though. I actually had the families planned out that I would beg to go and live with if they separated us.
I actually wish there would have been sort of a compositional scene of music in the Kingston Group, because there just wasn't. I think it's really cool that there was a rebel music gang budding within the FLDS community, and that my wife was essentially the leader of it.
I wasn't the leader. I just was part of it.
Well, you're willing to take risks. There weren't even people taking risks in the Kingston Group.
Yeah.
You certainly have somewhat of a more independent mind. That's for sure. I mean, you did then and you do now. So, so you decide. Lyle tells you. Did you write the letter to Lyle after asking if you could go to college?
I asked in the letter to go to college and got a no, I think, first, and then I talked to him for the 2 hours.
That is, to me, that's just crazy, because I could not have, in my mind, if somebody wanted to go to college, they were just an apostate. I'm just trying to understand like the mindset. Did you feel like this is how it was in my mother's day? I can go to college, Well,
there were people going to nursing school, and to me, I have a really high need for aesthetic beauty, for creativity. I know that everybody doesn't prize it as much as I do, but I really need that. I started seeing people going for nursing, and there was a couple other degrees. There was a few people going for nursing or something related. And I thought, as much as people need their wounds bandaged, we need music.
See, I have a question for both of you on this topic.
So I thought I should go for music as much as they should go for nursing.
Got it.
So I wonder, how was this flame still lit? How did this flame, with all the deprivation that you talked about, with everything that was going on in the lands of refuge and the cricket and whatever else, how did this flame stay lit in your group? Because it didn't in mine.
Of music?
Yeah, of people that were willing to take risks, you and others. How did that? Because I wonder, it feels like to me, even with all the bad things that you've said, I look at what happened in the FLDS. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of really good things that happened there. Even amongst all the separation and what would you say, the distance that was between the FLDS groups and the outside world, there were things that happened there that were way far better and beyond than what happened in the Kingston Group. When I look at the Kingston Group, I'm like, dang, we really missed out. Like, we did not have the best polygamous culture. And I'm like, we were so choked, just like all the time. I hated the music in the Kingston Group. I hated singing hymns, but I would do it because it's the best thing we had.
Well, it's not that we had a lot better music there. We didn't have very much good music. I mean, earlier than people would play Phil Coulter and other stuff. But during these order years, we didn't have good stuff. There was just people like me who started composing our own stuff and wanting good stuff, but we didn't have good stuff.
Well, what I'm wondering is what was there in the culture, and maybe it was there before Warren took power, but what was there that allowed the roots of this to be there? What happened that allowed this to even exist?
I feel like the FLDS were people that really, in some sense, they're pretty creative. In the sense that, you know, if you're trying to get something done, they'll almost always figure it out. You know, if it's building something, of course they can get something done. But even like, you know, technology or otherwise, they really have a lot of drive to get things done.
Well, what allowed that creativity to be expressed? And the reason why I asked that question is something happened in the Kingston Group to where that creative impulse was just mostly wiped out. It was cold out of existence. And more recently, as the group has grown and it's been harder to manage and control so many people, it's started to emerge again. But I was just so bored with what happened in the Kingston Group. I'm like, what's going on in everyone else's mind? And only as I got older did I realize, oh, okay, they're not speaking the truth. They're not speaking from their heart. But I'm like, what happened? What existed? What trends or movements happened in the FLDS?
Well, I think Uncle Fred had a big thing to do with it. Uncle Fred Jessup, the bishop, really encouraged community programs so that people could keep themselves occupied, keep the young folks interested and engaged. He encouraged that, and he was the bishop until, I don't know, the early 2000s or something. And he's the one that got my piano teacher started, Misty Jessup Sitting. He was kind of her secondary or father figure or something. Basically, she was his prodigy. Anyway, I think he encouraged a lot of other people, like the Wall sisters. I think Rebecca and Jenny did a lot of music and dance. And then there was Colleen Darger. She was, as far as I remember, she was overseeing the high school plays. I was really young at that point, so I don't remember.
High school plays?
Yeah, like
what?
The Opposite Side of the Bells. Did you ever watch that one?
No.
So the last play that the public high school put on, I think it was like 1998 or 9. The Opposite Side of the Bells. Grandma Kath Jessup, or whatever her name is, wrote Bradshaw Jessup. She wrote the music for that. Camera lights off. 2 of them off. It is 5:20, so we should wrap up soon. I do have one other thing I want to go over.
Yeah, we're just getting started here.
I know, man. This is a party.
Yeah. I feel like on your question about the creativity, what she was saying is the community was a lot different in 1980. A lot different. And I think that, like, if you ask my mother and a lot of those people, there was no better place to grow up ever. And they'll fight for it. They'll fight all day.
Let me ask a question about that. So my question is, well, first I have kind of the 2-part question. When did what we call the FLDS today, when did people start to gather in what is known as Hilldale in Short Creek? Like, what year did about that start?
1940.
Okay, so do you think it's possible that because people had a place to go,
yes,
that a strong identity formed and a strong cultural bond formed?
Yes, and all of those community gatherings, they are much less likely to happen when people are spread across the valley. Like up in Salt Lake, just trying to get to where other people are takes up a huge percentage of your day. Like travel time is outrageous. And so living in one place, in one community where you can drive 3 minutes and you're at the practice place for your kids' music program, that was a big deal with actually getting any good music and community stuff produced.
Like, it seems like to me that the feeling of a close village is what made the best parts of the FLDS the best parts.
Yeah.
Because what it felt like, the craziest thing about growing up in the Kingston Group is it felt like we weren't a group. It felt like we were a million atoms that occasionally came together and here's Sunday, let's go back together to our daily lives and just imagine we don't know each other, don't talk about it, don't think about it. oh, let's go back to church again. And then back. It's like,
yeah, that was definitely something special about where we grew up. Is not only did we go to church and you would see the people but then you would go to the work projects or the school. When I was younger, we went to school and you'd see the same people and you actually got to know them, interacting with them and feel like they're a part of your life. And that is actually one of the core things that I want to bring back to my kids. I'm going to create my own, I'm going to piece together a life that eventually will bring this aspect back into my life and to be there for my kids. Even if it's not a big community with thousands of people, just having a handful of families that you can reliably count on, that these guys want to be a part of my life and want to be a part of my kids' lives, and we can experience that together.
See, I'll mention how the Kingstons had a teeny tiny bit of that. There's a place the Kingstons call the home place. And what's interesting, oh man, this is really fascinating to talk about it in this sort of a context. So in the beginning of the Kingston Group, they all lived on the same plot of land. It's called the home place. And then as they got bigger and bigger and bigger, they would start to divide it up. And then eventually they outgrew it, and people just started buying houses here and there, and they spread out across the valley. The strong stories that people talk about, that people get emotional about, and that they remember are all from that period of time. Almost nothing from after that period of time. And what looks like happened is the Kingstons, as they grew, they didn't place importance for the cultural identity on staying together. And because of that, it became so terribly fragmented that anybody that wasn't essentially a part of that core group, they just dwindled, and it was anemic. They didn't develop that muscle. And the people that are in control of the group right now, they all tend to do the same thing. They get land and they stay together, and they're able to form a coherent identity. And the people that don't do that, they're just onlookers. They're hangers on.
Outside circle.
Right. But what's cool about the FLDS is that they came together, and it was like, it doesn't matter that you were the prophet's kid or that you were the lowest person on the totem pole. You're in the same place, same kind of area.
Until they went to Texas.
Yeah,
well, right. I mean, for a while, right?
Oh yeah. So
then there was the people that were better than us that we were working to go and join, the saints and the lowlifes. I was in the lowlife place.
So you felt like the people in Texas were the high end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And see, for me, I was always in Texas, so I never saw that side of anything.
So you're the best?
Yeah, I was like
That's
best.
Cool. Wow.
I mean, I literally didn't.
You didn't feel that way because Warren Jeffs made the people who were closest to him and who were supposed to be the best feel the worst.
Yeah, I felt like I was part of Warren Jeffs' family, and in some sense got to be there. But, we were always told the people in Short Creek are working so hard for you guys to survive, and, you need to sacrifice more and whatnot. So it was quite a community, though, there in Texas. There was 800 people, and it was a good community, but it was far stricter. And I think anybody that grew up in my day, if you didn't experience at least some of what she experienced when she was younger, like she got the very tail end of it. Everybody before, they'll fight they'll say that was the best way to grow up. Anybody in my day.
Understandably, right?
Yeah.
And for many really good reasons.
Yeah, anybody in my day were like, this was way too controlling. Mm-hmm. Well, Katie, if you're trying to go soon, we got to hear about your decision to go to college and sort of what happened. What pushed you to leave?
What pushed me to leave is that groups like the Kingston Group and the FLDS offer structure and belonging at a soul-crushing price. And my soul was getting crushed. My soul wanted music. My soul wanted to be able to ask questions and to explore and to say, why are things the way they are? But I knew by experience that if I asked the wrong question, or if I wanted to feel free and just do what I wanted anyway, as far as, say, music or other things go, that I would be quickly put in my place. And that my survival would actually be at stake. That I would have safety and protection withdrawn from me as far as being able to feel like I was accepted and to be able to stay in the group and not be, say, sent away or something. or at least have to deal with a lot of confrontation for people who are upset. Like if I was to just, I'm curious about, I want to have Mozart in my house no matter what, I would have been made a non-member. If I would have made a big deal about it, and then, you can get sent away at that point. Like this is actually a matter of survival. And so finally I'm like, you know what? I'm done with the crushing of my soul. I'm done with this anxiety about not knowing which piece of rock my foot's going to step on next, what the rule is going to be, whether they're going to change their mind, whether what's okay now is going to be not okay tomorrow. I need stability. I need to find out who I am, what I am also. And so that's what music became, I did want to go to college to study piano, but I also just wanted a container to move into, to get out of the storm, to step off the quicksand and just give myself a place to reorient and say, what do I care about? So once I started going to college and looking at theory books, I started realizing, you know what? These books on the shelf, the actual books, are this is such an amazing host of friends. The people who wrote the books are dead now, but they put their wisdom in the book, and I can pick that up. Like, we hadn't had libraries, and I'm very curious and intellectually inclined. And because we didn't have libraries, like I was bored. I so much wanted information. And so when I found this library, I was overwhelmed and awed. Every time I would bring something home, I started sneaking great course videos home, like the teaching company, lectures on all sorts of different topics. And one time my piano teacher, who I was sneaking out to see on the way to piano lessons, said, you could room with other women in a college dormitory. And the idea had never crossed my mind. And I said, I was really kind of upset at that at the time. This sounds so scary, no. And then you think about it. Oh, maybe. Anyway, enough of that. Then I went down to the college application office and started putting my name on things and got it in. And there was so much anxiety in my heart around that time because I knew that I would be considered an apostate once Lyle found out. But a couple months before college starts, Lyle goes to jail. And I rejoiced and rejoiced and rejoiced. Because now I can still talk to my mother, and I was able to keep students on the weekend for my part-time job. They didn't know what was going through my head. They knew I was going to college, but you keep the dress on and you keep the right face. Then there's some people who are willing to keep coming to lessons, and some people wouldn't touch me at that point. But some people were like, yeah, look, somebody's doing something with it. Somebody's smart. Somebody's got something she can teach us. And
wow,
I wasn't a good teacher because I'm sorry if any of my students are listening to this. I was very unavailable emotionally. Like I just wasn't nice to be around because I was so mixed up and I was just not sorted out inside.
Why do you think that was?
I get to that, but
let
me come back to that.
The fact that even though you were that disorganized inside and they still kept coming back means you were that good of a teacher.
Well, I had something that was valuable, but it definitely wasn't my presence. I was not kind and supportive of my students.
Did you? Did you wear your dress at college?
Oh, maybe on a few of the days, like performances when I knew crickers were going to be showing up. But no, I went to the DI and I said, do you want to give me some clothes? Because I don't really have money. I'm trying to spend the few dollars I have on my college books. I'm a charity case. Okay, I don't like doing this. It really is embarrassing, but I'm like, I can't deal with all this attention by wearing a dress. This is like it. I'm an attraction when I wear this dress. And I tried wearing the dress on the campus, and all of the other little college students would snicker at me, and I couldn't handle it. So I'm like, I got to get some clothes. So I went and I told the shopper, hey, I don't know how to pick out anything that goes together. Can you help me? And she's like, well, you just get jeans and a t-shirt. They gave me $100 voucher from the Mormon church, I guess, and courtesy of them. And I filled up my cart full of stuff. And I went around wearing big baggy jeans with these big bell bottoms and button up colored shirts. It was totally out of style. The style at that time was tight pants that shows butt crack and whatever they have to have on the top. Whatever minimal clothing, t-shirt or tank top or whatever. Anyway, that I will tell you that was extremely offensive to me. Like I would be walking down the college aisle behind whatever girl, and you'd see with the pants, and I'm just like, why can't people, this is an institution of learning. I don't even want to look at this person, and they're making me look, this is just, I'm not ever going to dress like that. And, okay, so.
Did you still wear underwear?
I can't remember exactly when I stopped. I think I'd stopped shortly before I went to college. But your question was what got me out, what was the living story like? And
yeah, just to clarify for the people, I asked about underwear. I'm talking about like the long underwear, right?
Yeah, so I was teaching piano students, and that gave me enough money to keep going. I lived on very little money, so I wasn't doing anything besides school and buying food. Some friends from the FLDS family gave me rent for free, which was very kind of them. So what college was for me, besides a place to learn music, it was a place for me to just sit with myself until I felt safe to start asking questions. And because I didn't feel safe to start asking questions, I could ask some of them, but we go in layers. The first questions I was able to start asking, which got me to go to college, is why won't they let me have this music that has nothing wrong with it? And why are they having inconsistencies across the doctrine? Like I sat there and tried to line up all the doctrinal points from the different books and make them make sense, and they just didn't. They would say one thing here and something different here, and it just didn't make sense. They weren't consistent. I'm like, why can't people be consistent, and why do the rules have to... Okay, so I started asking those questions. But there were other questions that I couldn't afford to ask for quite a while. I didn't look into the Warren Jeffs stuff for 2 years and into college. 2 years. What I did, what the layers I got to...
So you were still faithful there in college?
No, I wasn't faithful. I was just going to college.
But your mindset...
I still wanted to remain connected to my people, but I knew there were problems with it. I couldn't afford to look into Warren Jeffs stuff because I wasn't able to tell what was real and what wasn't. We had been told for so long that the news media and all of the people outside of our group were full of BS when it comes to Warren Jeffs, and so we couldn't listen to them. So I thought, instead of just going to listen to them and giving myself more of an upset to deal with, more chaos, then I'm going to take some time to orient myself. I'm just going to see how this culture is. I started watching movies, a lot of romance movies, like how do men and women interact? Because I really only knew what I'd seen from my mother and father and close people like that.
How did that surprise you? How did it affect you? Just your view of the world.
I can't remember a lot. I was surprised at a lot of things, just little details that don't come to mind now, so I'm going to skip that one for now. But that's what I focused on. And I focused on looking up stuff on Wikipedia that I didn't understand. I even tried to figure out what other people did for meaning in their lives. I went to one of the kids who was going to college. He stopped me and started to talk to me. He's looking for somebody to date, I guess. And I didn't let him get to that conversation, but he tried to. And what we talked about before that point, before he walked away, was, what do you guys do? Like I said, when I was out in my community, then we had such a strong sense of community, of being together, of a greater purpose, all this, And he's like, well, most people out here I go to church, but most other people go to clubs. I'm like, oh, that's not even going to make the mark. No, you're so disappointing. Anyway, I was disappointed with the answer because I'm like, a club is never going to fill this place. This thing that I know I'm letting go of. No. Anyway, the other things around that time, this was my first year in college at Dixie State, was I had an advisor who was incredible at this point in my life. His name was Brian Grobe, and he advised people, but he was also had a couple degrees in acting. He's an actor, and he knew actors have to be able to be present in their body. If you can't be present in your body, feel your emotions, and let go with whatever the script is, you're a bad actor. Well, he knew how to get into his emotions. And one of the first things that he taught me was how to recognize when I didn't want to hug. Like, we became friends and we'd chat here and there. And one day he's like, do you want to hug? Because I was walking out the door. Bye. Do you want to hug? And I'm like, kind of stiff and kind of turned sideways, And he's like, you don't want to hug. And I was like, how can you tell? And well, look at that. And I was just mind blown. Like, you can actually tell just looking at somebody, they don't want to hug. Anyway, we got talking about a lot of things like that. And then he invited me to some acting workshops. And these acting workshops, this might be something useful for anybody in here who still feels dissociated from their emotions or like, stiff or not present. Do this sort of a thing. I went to his acting workshop, and he was focusing on something called the Meisner technique. They do various different things, like saying one word over and over again. Anyway, the back and forth between two people, that, or even tossing something back and forth. When you have to pay attention to somebody else and you're saying a word or a sentence or anything, like, you go through an entire emotional journey. We did other things where you would chase somebody around the room and you would go or stop depending on the mood they were giving back to you. You like really have to pay attention to those emotions. And I learned about eye contact at that point. We did not do eye contact in the group. And it could have been mostly my family, but I think it was more widespread. There were some families who had more eye contact than others.
I would agree.
The more extroverted families would have more of that. The more families who had more tolerance for the ridiculous and the curious would have more eye contact. But my family, I didn't. My mother didn't. My father, we were all kind of introverted. Anyway, I remember going through the college hallways before that and thinking, and Walmart before that, all the women out here are so fake. Those painted eyelashes, painted hair. I don't even look at them. They look like garbage, And and just the superficialness. Oh, lament. So this is the world's going to hell. And then I thought that about the college people too, but then I started to be able to tap into my body, into those emotions, and to say, I'm safe enough to feel this, and I'm not going to be penalized for, just what's going to happen. Let's see what happens. And I started lifting my face up and looking at people's faces. And I'm telling you, you never have a more amazing revelation than to start seeing people's faces. Because the most important things in people's lives is connection. Connection to yourself, going inside and saying, what do I think and feel and value? Connection to other people. What is this environment around me? And there's something sacred here between people who see each other. And connection to the world around us, the divine, to nature. And we have been being disconnected from in all of those three ways in the cult. Narcissists do that to their families. Our leader did that to us. We had nice times when we'd go out walking and hiking and feel connected to divine in that way, but anytime there was a chance to disconnect people in this way, it gave them control. Anyway, so that is where I discovered how powerful that could be.
That's fascinating. So did you feel pretty lonely and pretty
Yes.
disconnected before? So when you started going to college, for one, the people in the group are starting to kind of let you go, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of don't connect with anybody.
Yeah, I was pretty lonely for a while there. And I knew I was living a split life. I lived a split life all through college. The time when the split life stopped is when I clearly moved out with Kent. And I'll tell you that story briefly here. So we met at the 4th of July. So I was going to the park, but not everybody knew. There were still a few piano students I had left.
Is this at the college or?
2021. 21. No. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. July of 2021. I met him. I was pretty much done with my school. I'd come home from Syracuse. I went to school in Syracuse, New York for a few years. And I'd come home because of COVID. I'd finished online. And then I'm just getting ready to do my recital. And by the way, I want to mention, I feel disappointed I didn't get more done real quick. This is sidebar. I feel disappointed I didn't play better. I didn't get more done. I just ended up not having the energy. I found out later that it's because I was really sick from mold. If you don't want to ruin your life and suffer for years and years, be careful not to live in a basement or anywhere else that you can see mold for sure. Like that ruined my life. But anyway.
And that you could start by also not being really lonely and not being totally out of money and having unsupporting parents.
Yeah, that too.
That might help.
Yeah.
That might help. You can afford a better apartment.
Right.
So I was putting my senior recital together, which I wish would have gone a little better if I would have not been sick.
Is that the one on YouTube?
Yes, it's on
Okay.
YouTube. And I...
Link in the description.
Mm-hmm.
Kent's like, you should be able to do the best that you can on this, so I'm going to pay your bills while you go practice. And I was delighted because I had been trying to keep a job and I just didn't have energy. I was too sick. So anyway, eventually, 6 months after we met or so, then I was ready to do my recital. I got up on the stage. I was performing in St. George, and I had about half the audience. The room was 3/4 the way full. Half the audience was Crickers, half the audience, well, everybody's Crickers. Half the audience was FLDS, and half the audience was apostates. I had a few Gentile friends who had contributed financially and with encouragement to my... Anyway, half my audience was FLDS and half was not. And I had a nice long knee-length, calf-length dress on. It was bought and it was wool, but it had a turtleneck. It was still modest.
It was pretty.
I was not
It was
wanting,
very pretty.
I wanted to save the offense for the end of the recital. I didn't want to offend up front. So he was being my stagehand. He had his long hair all done up and in a little bun, and he had a nice suit on, and he looked very, everybody thought he's just a stagehand probably. And I played my music. But then he got up at the last with me, and I said, I want to introduce my fiance. This is, Kent Bull. And there's just like, yeah.
Okay.
And he tried to kiss me and everything. I was like, that's not appropriate. Kind of pushed him away, and he didn't know why. And anyway,
he's the inappropriate stage.
But you knew where he knew where you were from, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So
we got each other.
you invited the FLDS people there.
And
Is
she
that-
also invited the devil. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, we got up and played an arrangement that I had made of Beauty and the Beast. And, we're sitting there playing together, crossing hands a little bit. This is pretty.
Uh-oh.
Was that before you told everybody or after?
Oh,
I don't know.
I think I told him that he was the fiance. And
That's right. Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we played. Anyway, there was some loud clapping from my supporters after that. And then on the way out, when everybody's walking out, I was shaking hands and whatnot. And Some people, like my mother, walked straight past me like you don't exist anymore.
Oh, man. Damn.
So that was my public declaration of leaving. That took about 6 years from start to finish, the whole process.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
So, when you met Kent, was it just a random meeting, or how did you guys actually meet?
No, I had an uncle who's out of the group, Merrill Stubbs. He had told me about this amazing person who was into politics and was really smart with his computer, and he just left his group, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we had a shortage of people like this in the creek. I don't even know anybody like this. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't know anybody who was smart and into things is because, I mean, I got a few people, but they were either already married or we just didn't interact with the men. So I didn't really know who exist. I saw a couple cute Richter boys or cooks or whoever, and that were smart at one thing or another, but I didn't know them, and I didn't really, I'm like, I want to meet this person when Meryl was telling me, yeah, like somebody's into politics. I love this stuff. Like when can I meet this person? And yeah, we'll get some together. Anyway, he ended up coming through for the party 4th of July, and so Meryl invited him over and to have some music and a conversation.
But it was a 6-year process of kind of processing the FLDS doctrine and, okay,
yes,
I'm willing to step out and learn a little bit more. Some point you started learning more about Warren Jeffs. Was that a shock?
Yeah. So my teacher, who didn't know, Fred Karpoff over in Syracuse, New York, he didn't know anything really first-handedly about the FLDS. He'd heard a little bit, but he wasn't bitter. And I thought, here's somebody who lives on the opposite side of the country. He doesn't listen to the news about it much. He doesn't know any of the whatever. I can trust his judgment because he's not going to really be biased. And there were some other people that were in the same boat that I'm like, I can listen to what they have to say. And I'm like, so what do you think about this? Or do you know anything about this? And they were careful, if they did know anything, to really not be offensive and to not shock me out of my socks, which I'm grateful for. But there was a few things he started saying, well, what do you think about this? Do you think that's appropriate? Well, what do you see about, Warren Jeffs in this case, that case? I'm like, well, I hadn't really heard of that. And so I would start to kind of just type just a little bit on Google. Like, maybe if I just ask this one question, let's see what information comes up. Because by that point, I had taken a literacy class in college where they teach you how to tell where a source come from. And so I'm like, well, I can at least judge whether I want to believe the source or not. Like, I don't have to put everybody into the same camp of bitter. And, not everybody has a case against him, whatever. Anyway, so I start looking at stuff and just a little bit at a time. Oh, one time before that in St. George, I had been walking past a student newspaper stand, and on the front page there had been this girl from the creek who was going to college who told her story, and she was complaining about not getting to eat chocolate and deep cleaning and restrictions and the dress and all this stuff. And I just was like, oh, this is, one of the students down there were talking to me like, is this true? And I was like, well, I'll have to read it because I'm not sure. So I kind of read through it. Otherwise, I would have steered clear of that. But I was trying to defend my community to this fellow student. And so I'm like, I'll look at it. I look at it and I'm like, yeah, well, she's just bitter. Some of the stuff's true, but I don't like the victim lens she's looking through. That I just don't even like this, right? And anyway, so finally over in Syracuse, I started being willing to question one little thing at a time. I can just handle one thing, and you think about it the whole next week and try to make it fit into my model of reality. And then once I decided that, yeah, this is just that these people are not doing right, Warren Jeffs is not doing right, then I finally allowed myself to really just binge all of the videos and the documentaries, and you just stay up at night and crank the wheel and then the explosion of anger. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
2 weeks of that and I was over it pretty much. But with the exception that I'd come home and start to try to feed it to my siblings. And you didn't know about this. You didn't know about that. And they were really angry at me. And I'm like, oh, maybe I better back off a little,
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I wanted to ask you both about, you grew up both in groups that were really strict as far as women and men, I guess. But especially the FLDS, I guess you could say, was pretty controlling of women. I get the Kingstons too, right?
Yes.
Now you're kind of out. You've seen kind of everything the world has to offer. What do you feel like? What do you feel like the right balance is?
Between what?
Between men and women.
You want to go first?
I don't quite understand the question. The ratio of men and women in the
No,
world?
no.
Power dynamics.
Yeah. Power. Like the FLDS was quite controlling of women. It seems like the modern world, a lot of relationships, women kind of control the men. I'm just wondering, what do you feel like the balance?
Yeah, I'm not a feminist, but I do think that everybody has a part to play. Like, say, in a traditional marriage, in the sort of marriage we have, it's about how we work together. Like, I don't believe anymore although I did for a little minute, theoretically, I don't believe that everybody should do the same amount of dishes or the same amount of childcare or the same amount of money earning. I think that we all have talents and skills, capabilities, and that each person should do what they're most able to do to contribute to the marriage. And I don't think that anyone should dominate or control the other person. I think that creates resentment and inequality and dynamics that will eventually break things up. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went through a really fascinating journey myself, which I felt so terribly betrayed by the revelations of the sexual philandering of the people at the top of the group that I went totally the other direction. I'm like, I'm just going to screw as many people as I can, and I'm going to do whatever. And I didn't realize that's just the savage survival instincts in my brain. And I said, well, men and women can do whatever they want. It doesn't matter. And I went through that phase of, maybe I should be a pickup artist. Maybe I should just go to try to lay as many women as I can and try to be a real pimp. And I thought, maybe the man should be dominant. Maybe she just, it doesn't even matter. And I went through this period of chaos and figuring things out. And there are some great thinkers as well as my own contemplation, which when my own thoughts weren't getting me in trouble, sometimes I was thinking through what I had heard from other good thinkers, because I'm like, well, this is kind of an important part of life. I should see some structured thinking to figure out how I should think about things. And where I ended up through all of that process was, well, there are deeply biological things that can give us guides as to how to think about what the relationship between men and women should be. And if you start from biology, you can start to say, okay, generally speaking, men should be relied upon to be protectors and providers. Generally speaking, women should be relied upon to be nurturers and those who sort of have an intuitive feel and understanding for what's going on, because that's where we lean biologically. Now, temperamentally, people are different. And so what I'm getting at here is that what each individual person can contribute to a relationship, to a marriage, depends on their temperament. And their temperament, you've got their personality traits, their unique character. And so figuring out that dance to me is a lot like dancing with a woman at a dance. And the Kingston Group did a lot of dancing. I've done a lot of dancing in my life, even outside of the Kingston Group. And it's like, okay, so in some dances, the man's responsibility is to lead. And most dances, I should say. And sometimes the lead changes between the man and the woman. But generally speaking, it's not that the man is going to dominate the woman. It's that he's going to say, I'll take the first step and get us going. And in life, that's generally how it is. It's not that the woman can't lead. She can lead. And sometimes she does. And it's really important that she does, especially depending if you're doing a really complicated dance move where, depending on how the guy's just not going to see where the woman is. And she kind of has to keep the contact on the body to make sure he knows where to go. And he does that for her sometimes. And marriage is a lot like that. It's like if some dance partner tries to dominate the other's like, this isn't very fun. I don't like this dance. Maybe we should not dance again. But if you can maintain that connection and you can say, okay, well, how do we sort of surrender to each other's movement and maintain that constant contact, that's going to take learning each other's personalities, each other's strengths and weaknesses through the highs and the lows, and continually coming back together to say, how do we figure out this dance? And whether that's feminist or patriarchal or whatever it is, if you can figure out how to maintain the connection based on what your temperament is on top of the raw biology, it seems like that's the most practical way to create a relationship. And generally speaking, if I had to make some ideas that have some rules or ways to order my thinking, I've found that, okay, the man is going to be relied upon to be stable.
Yes.
That's what men are supposed to bring. Now, what's fascinating is in order for a man to be stable, he needs to be connected to his wife. And if a man dominates a woman, he's not connected. Mm-hmm. So what the man has to learn how to do is to learn how to let go of his ego and to accept criticism when it's appropriate. Now, it's also essential that the woman learn how to do that. And it's like the woman has to learn how to be a man, and the man has to learn how to be a woman, because they have to learn how to compensate for the other one's shortcomings. And it's not that I'm saying that people need to switch roles, but it's like you need to be able to, okay, sometimes I'm going to be the man of the situation, but sometimes maybe my wife needs a little bit of comfort. Maybe she needs a bit of support, and I need to take a break from being macho bull, and I need to be a matre bull, the mother, for a little while. So what this gets down to me is, so there's the anima and the animus, if you look at Jungian analysis and psychology. And if you can find a good balance if you can learn how each one thinks. You've got to map out their thinking, and you'll find over time that you naturally tend to gravitate towards one role or the other. And what seems to happen to me in healthy relationships is that men are relied upon to be masculine, women are relied upon to be feminine for very good reasons. But if you force people to always occupy that role, there will breed resentment. But the important thing is to find how you become connected.
Thank you. Katie, I know you guys have kids and you're trying to go.
I have one more thing before that.
Yeah. So I have one. Do you want that?
You go first.
Do you want that to be the last thing?
Yes.
Okay. So my last question for you guys is, Katie, I don't know how your relationship was with your father. Was it bad, good?
It was good, but he was not emotionally available. He was very supportive physically, the needs we needed, the food, the shoes. We could rely on him for that. But as far as I can go pour out my heart to my father when I need help, he might give us a little quick practical advice. But he was very brusque and had quite an edge, a little cold edge.
Yeah, I know we need to go, but how many wives did your father have?
3 living, 4, 1 dead.
Okay. How many siblings did you have?
I don't know, 39 or 37 or something.
Quite a few then.
Yeah.
Well, my question to you guys is, Kent and I talked extensively kind of about our fathers, and I guess your father was also somewhat emotionally disconnected. My question is, you two have 2 boys now. What makes a good father, in your opinion?
Wow. First off, a father who's there.
Yes.
Second off, a father who listens.
Yes.
So I guess the father has to do 2 primary things: listen, acknowledge, and challenge. It's the father's job to be metal sharpening metal.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's the father's job to push the children out of the family when it's time, when they need to grow their own wings. But it's also the father's job to make sure that the discipline, that the law is laid down.
And to help them explore the world. Mother wants to hold the children close and to keep them safe. The father's got to help them get out and crawl and go deal with the bug on the ground at first. That's my toddler. Or later, figure out how to deal with a driving ticket or avoid one, hopefully.
Yes, the father's job is to make sure that every child and every son has an adventure, even if it means pushing them out. Sometimes children don't need that. They'll go on their adventure by themselves and they're like, "Daddy, can I go? Can I go?" And you're like, yeah, go. And the other kids are like, "I don't know if I want to go." And Dad's all, "Get out."
But if somebody doesn't have a dad, that like I think, how would my son turn out if he didn't have Kent? If Kent had just left me, or not been present? Well, my son would be overly cautious and sensitive and concerned about safety. I actually think this is one of the reasons why kids in the modern world are more concerned about safety, about being safe, about safe spaces. Is there's a lot of single parents. Anyway.
And a lot of checked out fathers.
Okay, we got to as many questions as we could, Katie, in the short amount of time we could.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
I got to leave you with one thing.
Yeah, so Katie has one more thing for us.
So when I started going to college, I got extremely wrapped up in personality theory, the Myers-Briggs 16 personality theory especially. And the reason why this was so useful to me is I was trying to answer some questions. I have a few notes here I'm going to check. My family and the cult weren't very validating of emotions, and they didn't help me understand and accept myself. So I thought I was weird. I was disconnected from my emotions. I was dissociated in some ways, and I felt alien in some ways. And also, I didn't really have any friends. I had a few friends who I did music with, but that's all that I really connected with people over. So I just thought I was a weirdo, and I learned my personality for the first time. I saw listed out clearly, oh, there's other people who are like you in a lot of ways. Oh, okay, maybe I'm not so weird. I actually am one of the rare personality type that has fewer people. Like I'm an INTJ, but yeah. So, but there are other people like me. So, why that was so useful to me is I was trying to ask myself some questions about myself and the world I was in, and the community I was leaving, the world, the society I was going into. Everybody who leaves cults asks similar questions. They have to figure out similar things. Now, I wouldn't have got so hung up on personality theory if somebody could have told me what I want to tell you, and that is, there are certain things that everybody who leaves a cult needs to figure out. And these core questions, there's 5 of them. I want to list them off because I would have given a lot for somebody to be able to give this list to me, and for me to be able to go and look into that and have a structured way to quickly, efficiently get through the process. Like, I wouldn't have taken 6 years if I could have had this. The 5 questions are, I'll go over them briefly and then a little bit more in more detail. The first one is a question of identity. Who am I? Really? Not who did the cult tell me, what was I in the cult? It's who am I really? Just me. Now, the second question is about relationships. Why did people treat me that way or treat each other that way? Why was I in a group that behaved that way? The third question is a question of reality. Was any of that true? And how do I know what's real now? The fourth one is about healing. You have a lot of pain come up and you feel like, why can't I just move on from the cult? Why do I still have to be angry about this or that? Or why do I have to feel whatever negative emotions or feel the absence of emotion? The fifth one is about direction. Where do I go now? How do I find meaning now? So a little bit more about that. Another way we could frame it is the first one about understanding yourself, reclaiming your identity. You're finding out what parts of yourself are real and what parts were forced by the system that you lived in. And am I good or bad for leaving? Do I really believe different things? So that's about identity. The second one is about the relationships. Did people really love me? Did my parents really love me if they were following that prophet or that system? Like, would anybody who loves their child do that? Can I trust anybody? Go ahead.
I was just going to say on that question of do they truly love me? I think a lot of people that leave, that are in the beginning processes of leaving, they feel like those people truly love them because that's all they know. And so I just am adding that you kind of have to get away from it and see kind of other relationships before you can really read if somebody truly loves you.
And also, somebody can have the emotion of love or think they do, but it can be conditional on whether you did the right thing to get that love, it can be more about being needed. Like, I feel like in my family, my mother did love me, but she would take the love away she would get upset and angry if I didn't show up in the right ways. Like, it was her dream and vision to show up at funerals, which became the most important ritual in the FLDS, because when the meeting stopped, the funeral is the important thing. It was her dream to have a united family of her kids show up at the funeral behind her in a line, making her look perfect, like, reinforcing her idea that she was a good mother.
Wow.
And when we didn't, she was upset, very upset for the rest of the day, which is, feels like an absence of love. So that sort of love was based on whether I showed up or not. Okay, so a little bit about the last three. The third one about reality. Reality is about how do you find out what's real now, and what can I believe spiritually, morally, and how could anybody believe the harmful things that they did in the cult, and what is the difference between healthy belief and control? So these are things that you have to figure out on your way out. And if you can focus on these, if you can get people to help you answer these questions, it can save time flailing around, burning yourself out all night on Hallmark movies or whatever else you want to sit on. That was me. Healing, number 4. Healing is about, why do I feel stuck, numb, triggered, or confused later? Still get angry when I hear certain things. What's wrong with me? How come I don't have access to my feelings? And why do I still feel like a child in some situations? That one, I still feel like a child in some situations. I felt that way through so many of the earlier college years, where I would encounter so many new experiences, so many first times, so many situations I didn't know how to deal with, because we had been raised as calves in the stall and not raised to deal with the actual world that would confront us. We weren't made to be strong for that. We were made to be protected from that in a little hole in a little box.
So on the healing, are you just saying people need to give themselves time and a place to heal, understand that they need that time?
Yes. Don't expect yourself to just move on from the negative feelings that come up, and get help to deal with them.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one, the direction, what now? How do I build a life when I was never allowed to dream or plan for one? So on your way out, you not only are you trying to fix these other problems, you're trying to look at where to go. You go to points when you say you get to places when you say, well, is there any point to life now? Can I even trust my intuition to guide me, or will I just fall into traps again? Will I fall into another cult? And I did. When I was in Syracuse, then I bought into the woke stuff, into the whole purple-haired professor thing and Black Lives Matter and stuff. It took me a little while to understand what was going on. And one of the things that helped me with that actually was coming back here, where I had an uncle or a cousin and another relative who I'd have debates with, and I'd throw out climate change stuff at him and well, Black Lives whatever things, and they would argue back with me and say, well, did you think about that? Or that's just not true, or and well, I'm a law enforcement officer. They never do that with prisons, that's just not realistic. And I'd sit there and think about it and go look more up about it, and I'd feel really bad to know I was just wrong.
Yeah, you really visited both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, man, you? Yeah. So, no, you can't always trust on your intuition to guide you. You just sometimes have to lean on other people and find some sources of information that you can try to think critically through. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you need to, I don't know.
I totally agree. When you leave these cults, you've been feeling a certain way all your life, and you can't always trust your intuition. That's how it was for me. I trusted my intuition for a long time, and it kept me there. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the last thing about the direction that we're trying to find now is, what is spiritual truth? If we got burned by the religion, what is there anything to God or that? No. So that's it.
Yeah, and that's a difficult one that a lot of people kind of go off the cliff on, and then they sort of come back a little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got all into the New Age movement stuff.
All right, should we ask any more questions, or you guys need to go?
I think we should ask about when we're going to do this again.
Yeah. We should do it again.
We should.
Maybe really at some point, I would definitely like to play a lot more FLDS music. I had a whole binder full of choir stuff I composed, stuff I transcribed a lot of the B-Zion increasingly stuff, arrangements of that on the piano. That was a sacred mission.
I didn't ever really get to ask what you think about lyrics. Have you written lyrics?
I taught a class to FLDS on writing lyrics. I haven't written a lot, but I really understand how they work. I can analyze them and pick them apart and edit really good. I can write them. I just haven't taken a lot of time because I've been focused on piano playing with college. Once I finally got my hands on lyric writing material where I could learn about it and practice it, then I just didn't have a lot of time to get them out. But yes, I love it. I love lyrics.
I want to ask an interesting question here, and I want to see what both your opinions are on it. Would it be true to say that the general psychological progression of the group as a whole for the FLDS was they had a strong cultural identity, and then that identity and emotional connection was used against them as manipulation, as an anchor to get them to be coerced into obedience? And what I mean by that is what I'm starting to finally understand what happened in the FLDS and why they were so able to be manipulated, because they had a strong, really, really strong bond. They had started to develop in the 1940s and 50s, strong identity. Many people had experienced it. And so when somebody started coming through and threatening expulsion from that strong bond, it was really powerful, a really powerful way to get people to conform. And because I'm thinking that because the Kingston Group has never done anything like, oh, you're exiled, you have to go out, because they've never had that strong of a control over. The reason why the pressure is not put on as hard from the Kingston Group is because if they push the pressure too hard, they just lose people.
I would 100% agree that the bond was ultimately the reason why the manipulation could get so strong. I mean, I was so bonded with my family that I just could not imagine a world outside of it. And it's a good bond. It's a good community.
Wow.
And she probably experienced the good side a little bit more than I did, because I was just, always in a pretty controlled environment. But
the reason why I ask about this is because it seems like there's so many people that I've met from the Crick that look back fondly on that time period, and I'm like, man, there must have been something good about it. And it's a topic of frequent conversation with Katie and I, to the point where we're studying, well, how do you make that sort of a village or town culture?
See this book? That's what this is about. We didn't even get to this, but this book is all about that, because we have kids, and I'm like, no way will I raise these kids in a fragmented sort of social life. I feel like we left these rigid and controlling structures because we are seeking freedom from all these things we've been talking about. We're seeking to reclaim our dignity, but then we go out into these cities, and there's actually a lot of disconnection and fragmentation as well.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that a lot too, because I've thought, do I want to live my life in the city sort of just without a community, especially when I've seen such a tight-knit community? I mean, we would all die for each other, 100%. And that's no joke. And it's sad to not have that in your life, in some sense.
So
Yeah, why would people go to war for a place where they don't even feel they belong?
Yeah.
But the people that do, they're like, I would defend it to my last breath without a second thought. And you're like, I want that. I want a place where I feel that possessive of it, that connected to it.
Yeah.
So that connection is something we want to rebuild for our children and for ourselves. And we also want to rebuild, we want to reestablish rhythms of life that you can count on, that become a part of the children's life especially, but also relationships that you really feel like you know the people and they know you and they have your back.
They have your back. But that's pretty rare. One of the things I think that kind of, I don't know, ruined my view of this on my way out of the FLDS is getting to where I just was like, I'm 100% on my own. It doesn't matter who I have for family. It doesn't matter who my friends are. It does not matter how loyal they say they are. I am on my own at the end of the day. And I cannot even trust anybody that says, hey, we're going to be there to help you.
That's because all of your friendships were made in a structure where loyalty was not the top priority. Obedience was. The root of the community that I want to put together over time for my kids is not going to be based on obedience and control. It's got to be based on healthier principles.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in that kind of a community, so hopefully I get an invite.
Well, if you get an invite, you might also be handed a shovel and told to dig.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we're not trying to put a cult together or anything, but
I know.
Village, not a cult, village.
I can go into more of what okay, the reason why I'm writing it down in a book, and nothing ever goes according to plan. Plans, as Winston Churchill says something about, planning is essential, but the plans are useless. And it's because the planning gives you a chance to flesh out ideas so that you could fail in the process of planning and not in real life. So I write things down here to really think things through. What do I want for my kids, and how can we put something together that has a chance of succeeding without getting into the traps that our communities did.
Are you going to publish the book?
Eventually what I want to do is, yes, put something out on my own website, on YouTube, whatnot, just for the process of getting it out there and having other people be able to have my ideas, especially people that I'm trying to connect with as, say, potential friends or community members, that they can have a resource to go and look, oh, well, what is Katie about? You know, how is she going to avoid the problems that we had, you know? And I'm not trying to build anything big. I think that intimacy and true connection is best shared in small groups of like 15 to 30 people. So you might have 3 to 5 people who decide, you know what? We're not moving anywhere. We need some friends. We want meaning. We want to have people that share our values. You're my neighbor, or I want to live in the area you're at. Can we get together with you and sit around the fire and roast our potatoes together and talk and share stories? And can you be here for me when my mother dies? And will you be here to give me a hug? You know, I mean, basic rhythms of life. So I think that getting it down in a book and having a system will make it replicable. So if you think of, I don't want to do anything that's centralized. We're not going to have any charismatic leader, any, I'm the boss of this thing. Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to have any of that. This is my idea, by the way. This is not he doesn't want anything to do with this just right now. No, he's going through a healing process where he feels like just being isolated right now. He just wants to be in his own sacred cocoon. So, you know, and I'm not trying to pull anything off right now. I'm just getting my ideas down. I think that one of the things that inspired me was I was watching the 12-step program. If you've heard of Alcoholics Anonymous or any of the anonymous programs, they're for people who need to recover from some serious illness like addiction, or like they're just not living healthily and they have emotional problems with people. They can't get their lives together. That's what those recovery programs are for. But anyway, what I like about the recovery programs is that they are decentralized. Everybody just has small little groups in whatever town where them and their buddies come together to work on recovery together, to get healthier together. And there is one central office that prints books and that sometimes facilitates conferences, but they don't tell you what to believe, what to think. You get to explore the world on your own with your friends. They give you a structure that you can use to hold yourself up and to get yourself going again, but they don't tell you what to do with your lives. So that's my idea here, is if I ever get past my 15 to 30 people, it would be in that way. It would be, here's what worked for me. Here's some information. You can help yourself. You can come and get a little bit of mentoring. But I have learned the lesson about power and the cults of personality and all that. And it's not appealing in the least.
Yeah, and I would totally agree. But also I would add that it's almost essential that you find that community, because one of the things I've noticed in my personal struggles is a sense of almost anger and sort of something that you would want to take out on the world, because you hit so many roadblocks and people can't understand you. And you once had that community, you know how it is. And the world becomes a darker and darker and more bitter place until something bad happens. So it's almost essential to find that community.
People to walk through life with.
I'll actually comment here from my healing cocoon.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull out the kimono for just a second and say, I'm actually stewing on some thoughts, the deep thoughts about the power, the money, sex, power, influence, all the things that are really hard problems to solve. Because in order to actually pull off a connected village or a set of villages or towns or whatever these little districts or precincts are going to be, you have to answer the hard questions. And the hard questions are rooted in what is good and evil? What's the darkness? What's the shadow? What's the light? How do we work with things from the shadow and bring it into the light and help people mature? Because there are concerns that are survival based, and then there are concerns that are thriving or thrival based. How do we thrive? And while I'm going through my healing process, I'm really attacking these questions, and because I want to know, okay, how do you actually create civilization that endures? Civilization, culture. What does it look like? Do I even know what healthy looks like? I know what sick looks like. And sometimes it seems like having something that's a little sick is better than having nothing at all. It's like, how could I witness true health? Where could I go to see, well, that's a village I want to be a part of. Man, that feels good.
Yeah.
I want to know. And how do they attack these difficult problems? I'm sure there's plenty of thinkers over the ages who have asked these questions.
Oh, I'm sure. And you totally have a point here. But one of the things I've been thinking about is, if you have a village that is going to be successful long term, you almost always are going to have some liabilities to where people are going to somehow be able to overthrow. Like, you have to have enough freedom in it that people are going to be able to, it's going to have its ups and downs. It has to be able to have its ups and downs, because if it's too controlled,
you have to have room for failure and questions.
Yes, and in those failure and questions,
I mean, the ability to redeem yourself if you make a mistake.
100%.
Without being banished.
Yes.
Unless, if you murder somebody, that's a different issue. You're going to jail.
Yeah, but if you don't have a community that is open enough to kind of fail, even as a community to some degree, and then come back, then you're going to have a community that's too controlled.
Rigid.
That it's going to be destroyed by one person.
Yes.
So like America is kind of that way. It has a lot of liability to fail, but somehow we've managed to not have one guy take us out.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree that you have to be able to figure out the questions he was asking about what healthy looks like. You have to be able to, and the other things you're saying, you have to be able to figure that out. You don't become perfect first and then start the community because, I'm not going to fail anymore because I've figured it out. I do think that there's a point, like there's some things you have to learn. Like you're not going to start a community when you're homeless on the street and drinking and stuff. That's no way to start. That you need to go to recovery rehab at that point. But once you're healthy enough, you can start doing things, rhythms, having the community fire or the Sunday dinner with your friends. Little things. I don't mean putting together a whole thing at once. You start doing little things that allow you to test and push and explore and work things out, where you don't say, I have to be perfect first, but you explore and you heal and you do it a little bit at a time rather than waiting for perfection. And you discover what you're looking for in the process and without trying to have the whole recipe figured out first. And that's what I would say about when Kent was saying that people have to agree on, what is good and evil, or not people have to agree on that, but something like that. Learning what good and evil is, having some shared values. Yeah, there has to be some process up front to figure out what the shared values are and if you're compatible. And I do have, some ideas for that in here, and I'm still exploring that as well. But I think the important thing is that it's a process, that you figure that out through the activities and through the conversations you have and through the stories you share and the time you share together, rather than somebody starting out at the first, laying down the rule, the doctrine and the dogma, and saying, it's my way or the highway. And that right there is already too rigid to start. And I don't want to go that way at all with my community. I want it to be open to the process of learning, of exploration, of mistakes, of redemption.
And if there's anything that I would add to that, it's the sensitivity to the fact that we're growing up in a new world. We have cryptocurrency. We have decentralized identity. We have internet. We have artificial intelligence, large language models. And so we've got different tools. We've got 3D printing. We have an advanced legal and financial system. If we consider ourselves to be cultural creators, we're in a very different situation than the 1910s, 20s, and 30s that led up to the creation of both of our groups. And so if we were to take let's go to I was about to say the bar or the pub, but let's say something a little more appropriate.
Okay.
Let's go to the park. Yeah. sit at the bonfire and say, let's pull our imaginary beards and say, what have we learned? Okay, if we were to... Oh, that turned off. Oh, just keep going? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you say, done. What have we learned? Where are we going to go from here? If we were to go at it again, because we're going to, and I have kids, it's not optional for us. We have to figure this out. Well, how can we make a ship that when the waves come, it doesn't just tip over, or a ship that doesn't end up just getting harbored somewhere dangerous forever?
Yeah.
Because you got to have a ship that's going to survive the open sea.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out right here. I wrote a whole book.
Well, I'll look forward to reading your book. Before I forget, where do people find you? Your website, Kent. I forgot to ask you yesterday. Mm-hmm. Where can people find you on your?
So right now, we haven't made a website for Katie. We're going to.
I'm just on social media, Katie Fischer.
We're going to do...
My name is going to be Bull at some point because we haven't changed my name. We've been too sick and too busy with the kids. Yeah. But Katie Fischer for now.
Yeah, so I've got 2 websites right now. One is kentbull.com. That's more technical focused. If you want to go nerd out and geek out or be blinded by opening the Ark, you can go to my kentbull.com. Eventually that'll probably change. I'll probably have a new brand for that. I have an idea. I'll be changing that to the Identity Bull. But the other one that's more personal, where we're going to discuss the hard questions of life and things like this, is called thepollardbull.com. There used to be a site mostly about the Kingstons, but I'm letting all that stuff go because we've got to look forward, not backward. I mean, we'll understand who we were and where we came from. But the Pollard Bowl is there to ask these difficult questions and explore the answers that come up. And so I'm sure some of the material that Katie and I go over will definitely make its way there. And I wouldn't be surprised if this connected village idea ends up with a domain of its own.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. All right. Any last thoughts or questions?
What's your favorite color? No.
Blue.
Red, it's the hair.
Yeah.
It's like, you chose that.
Okay. I chose it in heaven, didn't I?
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Now,
Katie.
we've got to talk about the spiritual world now.
Yeah.
The spirit world.
Katie, one more thing. Would you be willing to go to the creek and do a vlog style video kind of showing around?
I'll think about that and let you know.
Okay.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it does sound fun because I kind of know the creek, but I didn't grow up there like a long period of time. I was there for to when I was 5 years old, right? And then a few months after, but other than that. So.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It was a pleasure doing this podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad. I really like what you're doing here, and it's so much fun to have these stimulating conversations with people from similar backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. That's encouraging to me. Everybody, you can follow Katie on her social media and Kent on his social media or websites. Thanks, guys, for coming. Thanks, everybody. Peace out.